Okay, now we come to something that's going to need an awful lot of work, and that is when we are crossing strings. Life would be great if we only had one string on the guitar and all we had to do was hammer on and pull off. Life would be easy, but it's not easy for us guitar players. We have to negotiate string crosses, and when we're doing standard legato technique, we don't have to worry about it too much. We really don't, because we've got the pick to allow us to transition from one string to the next. And because we have a pick stroke followed by two hammer-ons, it gives us plenty of time to move the pick over to the adjacent string. Okay, so it's not a problem with that. However, with left hand only, it does present a problem. And that problem is generally to do with the index finger. Because if you think about it, standard rock legato technique requires that we pick the first note on every new string. That means that the index finger does never ever get an opportunity to hammer from nowhere. In other words, without the string already vibrating. So what you'll find is, if you're new to this technique, your first finger will be very, very uncooperative in the early stages, because it's simply just not used to hammering on from nowhere. It's used to having the pick as a stabilizer, you know, but we don't have that. So we've got to make sure that note comes out nice and cleanly when we cross strings. Okay, so that's something that I work on all the time to try and improve. For one, making sure the legato going from one note to the next, there's no separation between the notes, you know, and that takes a long time to develop. It takes a lot of dedication to practice. And the other is making sure there are no extraneous strings ringing off and no extraneous noise. So we've got to make sure our muting technique is up to scratch, which I'll cover shortly. But yeah, when we're crossing strings, let's take the bottom 6th string to the 5th string on a B major scale, which we've been playing. Get rid of this. So, hammer on from nowhere, but when we cross strings, we've got to make sure our index finger is positioned so we're muting strings either side of the note that we want. Okay, like I say, I'll get into that shortly. So we can shorten that. We don't actually need this part. All we need is the last note on the low E string going on to the next note of the A string. So we need to be able to continually do this without any noise whatsoever, because that is basically zoning in on the string cross movement of playing scales. So, and this applies to whatever you're playing. So what I like to practice is this kind of pattern. Because that covers pretty much every movement that we're going to need. It's the index finger alternating between the 2nd, 3rd and 4th fingers. Okay, so what I'm doing here is just alternating, hammering on from nowhere to the A string, fret 7 in this instance, then I'm hammering on with a 2nd finger to fret 8 of the E, then it's fret 9 of the E with a 3rd finger, 10 with a little finger, stretch up, and then 11, then 12. But what we want here is, we're not worried about speed. Forget about speed. We're concentrating on the clarity of the notes, making sure the separation is as smooth as possible. Okay, we can practice the same thing on the top E string. For instance, we can do. Notice how clean that was as well. So it's the index finger really that needs the work here. Okay, and then you can practice doing 1 and 3 and all the other fingers. just as we did with the low string. So we need to practice that across each pair of strings, so that we're negotiating the string crosses and we're working on it individually rather than tackling the scale as a whole. We're working on it individually, and this is really important. I can't stress how important this is, because when we're playing through scales or playing lines and licks and whatever it is, we have to negotiate those string crosses cleanly and accurately, and we've got to make sure that transition from one string to the next is as smooth as possible without any gap between each note.